Well, welcome everyone. My name is Ann Robson. I'm the president of the Owasco Watershed Lake Association, and I welcome you all to our August 2022 public forum. This evening, we're very pleased to have as our presenter Dr. Adam Effler, who is the executive director of the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council. And so I'm pleased that we'll have an opportunity tonight to hear his presentation and to understand better our roles together. Now, a little background of Dr. Effler. He has quite the expertise in environmental science research. He has a lot of experience in collaborative partnerships, especially looking at protection and restoration of watersheds. And we think of how critical that is for our own Owasco Lake water quality, the health and safety here of our community. Adam has quite a knowledge of our federal, state, and local laws and regulations that are in place that govern our water resource management. So I know we are looking forward to a long continued working relationship here with Adam within the Owasco Lake watershed as we just look at the new environmental management and policy decisions that are being made at our state and county level. So with that, Adam, thank you for being here, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Anne, for that very generous introduction, and good evening to all of my friends from Aula. I see many familiar names in the participants list, and it's been my pleasure working with Aula over the last several years. So my name's Adam Effler, and I've had the pleasure of acting as the first executive director of the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council. I've been in that role for a little over 3 years, since March of 2019, and for that, over the course of that tenure, have been involved working very closely with Aula on a variety of projects, and we'll go into the details of some of those projects in this presentation. So what is the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council? We're really a central hub for coordinating watershed protection among a variety of partners. We're an intermunicipal organization, really structured like a local development company. And so this presentation will review the organizational structure and our sort of founding mission and objectives, the existing regulatory status, the condition of the watershed, public outreach initiatives, and special projects. Okay, so in 2010, Zolio, he committed the first $60,000 to start the inspection program for the Owasco Lake watershed, with the requirement that the local contingent agreed to fund the program afterwards. Initially, the inspection program was under the umbrella of the Soil and Water Conservation District for Cayuga County, and the water purveyors, the city of Auburn, and the town of Owasco really wanted to have some more control over protecting and oversight over protecting their valued water resource. The ultimate goal of the council that was founded in 2011 is protection and restoration of the watershed to protect and improve lake water quality, acknowledging the fact that perturbations within the lake are driven by non-point source pollution. Those are watershed activities. I'm not going to go through all the common statistics. Many of you on the call and those active volunteers involved with Aula are well aware of several of these statistics related to the watershed. The drainage area for the watershed is 208 square miles. There are 3 counties that have a footprint within the watershed: Cayuga, Onondaga, and Tompkins. 15 townships, 2 villages. And one of the important statistics here that I want to review is the land to lake ratio, the size of the watershed relative to the size of the lake. And that ratio is 20-1. It's the largest of the Finger Lakes. And really that has a bearing really on the effect that the watershed has on the lake. A very large watershed relative to the lake can provide for a condition where the source water for that lake comes from a wide-ranging area. There are a couple of nuances associated with that statistic. One is that, of course, there are potential influences that can come about quickly and affect the lake potentially adversely. But on the flip side of that coin, as we work towards mitigation and lake protection efforts, improvements in lake water quality can also manifest quickly. And the flushing rate is relatively quick for this lake, in part due to, or vastly due to, the size of the watershed that really flushes the lake. So the lake flushes about every 3 or 4 years or so. The duty of the Owasco Lake Management Council, well, there are a handful of duties. The council monitors and evaluates the general health of the waters of Owasco Lake and its watershed, supports research in the watershed to help drive management decisions. The council oversees the Owasco Lake Watershed Inspection and Protection Division. This is a regulatory body implementing watershed rules and regulations. And this body is charged with identifying and stopping activities within the watershed that may result in a decrease in water quality. The council also works on implementing projects by partnering with a variety of groups and agencies, including but not limited to Cayuga County. They've really spearheaded some important projects for us recently. The Nature Conservancy, they've brought some important projects to us recently as well. Of course, the Owasco Watershed Lake Association yourselves, we value as a very close partner. The Finger Lakes Institute and the New York Department of Environmental Conservation. That's just to name a handful. And there are many more. The council also looks to implement educational programs that will increase public awareness about responsible care and protection of the watershed. Okay, so I'd like to go into more sort of broad goals. The council is looking for continued buy-in to build directorship. We want to see all of the municipalities within the watershed have directorship on our board. Currently, we have 13 directors, 11 of which are watershed municipal representatives. So the other 2 include the city of Auburn, the north end of the lake. That's really outside of the boundary of the watershed. And Cayuga County, which of course has jurisdiction, but is not specifically a municipality, considered a municipality within the watershed. A balanced approach is necessary, of course, for achieving behavioral change and advancing conservation. And so, and the reason I say that is we have this regulatory side. We've been active in supporting the rollout of updated community consensus watershed rules and regulations for the interest of compliance. This is a project, the advocacy end of this project, we've worked very closely with AULA on, and I believe we've gained traction in part due to the advocacy behind that project. And those updated rules and regulations are currently under consensus review with New York State agencies. That is, we have made an important step in the right direction and are continuing to make progress on that particular project. We also believe it's important to expand community outreach and education to promote voluntary adoption of conservation and best practices. And we have several programs ongoing to support that end. And also, we look to identify and secure funding sources to advance watershed protection and restoration projects and programs. And we'll discuss some of those in tonight's presentation as well. I'm not going to go through all the names of existing members and directors on our board. We have had some new directorships in the last several years. Just in 2022, we resolved to have the town of Dryden at the south end come on board with directorship and representation from a partner, Ann Clark, who's on the conservation board for the town. So my screen is not advancing now. Dave, I don't know. Can you still hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We see it. It looks good. See your mouse move, your cursor moving.
Let's see if I can.
There you go.
Good. Okay. All right. Good. So the council really presents an opportunity to leverage a unified voice among governments, right? The municipalities that reside within the watershed or have jurisdiction within the watershed. And the existing vacancies to be filled include Groton, Sempronius, Venice, Genoa, Skaneateles, and Lansing. We prepared a map on the right side of the slide you'll see here. So we have directorships that make a financial commitment. Not only do they have a directorship, but they commit financially. They are indicated in green. We also have directorships in yellow that have yet to make a financial commitment. And then we have the remaining, I believe it's a pink color, are watershed municipalities that have yet to join. So we have an ongoing pursuit of buy-in for those remaining municipalities. A basic bar chart here. So you'll see that some of those that indeed do have a directorship on our board, Moravia and Locke have all, if not most of their footprint within the watershed. And many of those that remain maybe only have a small footprint in terms of their entire area spatially, actually within the watershed. This is a map that Dave Carr really took the lead on creating a couple of years ago, revised in July of 2020. And I helped him some on this particular project. And there's just a couple of features I wanted to point out in Aula's map here. One is that the lake and the watershed are really positioned centrally among all of the various partners and agencies and entities that are involved with collaborating to protect the watershed in the lake. And I think that's an important point too, is just to see the breadth of the commitments that many different groups have towards watershed protection activities. Okay. And so the overarching goal here is prevention. So and what does that mean? For scientific jargon, we often talk about bottom-up approaches and top-down approaches. To give you a sense, a top-down approach to managing water quality, certainly in the context of providing for safe drinking water, is a drinking water treatment or filtration plant. There have been recent upgrades for the water purveyors for the city of Auburn and town of Owasco, so that they can treat for harmful algal bloom toxins. And the issues with top-down approaches is it's not well known how long that particular approach, for the instance, for example, filtration of cyanotoxins, how long that approach will continue to work under potentially increasing cyanotoxin concentrations. So that's not well known or understood. So the bottom-up approach here is prevention. So we look towards reducing pollutants and pollutant discharges to the lake from the watershed. And we do this through the implementation of existing watershed rules and regulations, as well as looking to updated watershed rules and regulations. So what are some of the features in the updated rules and regs that are currently under the review with the state agencies that are involved? They would include nutrient management plan requirements for farms, riparian buffer requirements for areas of land adjacent to watercourses, setback requirements, and better protections for ditches. And also for pollutant reduction, we are looking towards creating consistent and common messaging to promote education towards conservation. So you'll look to the right, there's the Lake Friendly Living Program, and I'll discuss more on this as we move forward this evening, really a messaging program that was spearheaded in part by the Management Council is a founding member of the Coalition for Lake Friendly Living across the Finger Lakes. We also are involved in land acquisition, land holding activities. and also trying to leverage our direct relationship with municipalities. So there are options for programming that are municipal eligible programs like climate smart communities that we've had some success on advancing for some of the municipalities. And then there's also some points of leverage, I would say, in advancing codes for municipalities. There are primarily, there's the town of Owasco has a sediment and erosion control measures in place required for construction activities. And we like to see self-sustained control measures via codes and enforcement at the municipal level grow watershed wide. These are a couple of bar charts provided by Olivia Green, the water quality specialist for the Nature Conservancy that we work most closely with. This was a poll that she put together in 2021, and I think it speaks to why this work is so critically important. So if you look at the bar chart on the left that she prepared, based on her poll, more than 2/3 of residents across the Finger Lakes report being extremely or very concerned about waters in the Finger Lakes. If you look at the right bar chart, nearly 9 in 10 support increased funding for programs to address Finger Lakes water quality. 3 in 5 strongly support programs. Okay, so this was a polling project that was conducted among 800 voters across the Finger Lakes. And why is this work critically important? So the picture on the left is a commonly used picture. This was taken by Tim Snyder, who now works for Cayuga County Soil and Water Conservation District. He was a watershed inspector back when it was the watershed inspection program, using a drone. This is an aerial photo of a Habs bloom at the north end of the lake. So this is sort of the elephant in the room. And so when we discuss points of leverage for reducing the occurrences of harmful algal blooms, it's important to understand the drivers of harmful algal blooms, of which there are a handful, but there are 3 drivers that are the most important. One of them is increasing temperatures of freshwater bodies that's associated with climate change. That's a very hard phenomenon for us, of course, to control or affect at a local level. Also, the presence of dreissindid mussels. Those are zebra mussels, quagga mussels that live in the sediments within the lake, very difficult to get rid of. And then the third being nutrients, primarily phosphorus concentrations that exist within the open water. And I'll talk more about how and why phosphorus is important, but that is really the driver that we can control at a local level. On the right here, cyanobacteria blooms. This chart here, this is from Halfman et al. In his 2021 report. It just shows the number of confirmed cyanobacteria blooms in Owasco Lake that were tabulated by the DEC New York State HABS website. And I would like you to bear in mind that sometimes when it comes to surveillance programs like the HABS surveillance program, there is confirmation or sampler's bias, whereby if there are more people looking, which I think it's become more important that we have surveyors out looking, making observations and identifying occurrences of HABs, is if you have more people looking, you can tend to have more observations, if that makes sense, more observations indicating blooms because there are people there, of course, looking. That being said, you will observe a increasing trend generally over time, over the last decade, of more occurrences of harmful algal blooms. Struggling to advance here, please bear with me. Dave, can you hear me?
We can hear you. I'm not seeing your cursor this time though. Oh wait, there, yep, see it now.
Okay. Let's see if I can. I'm going to stop share and I'm going to reshare. Let's see. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Okay, good,
There you
good.
go.
Okay, I'm sorry for that hiccup there. I'm not sure what's happening here with these the slide stalls, but let's keep it going. So again, back to drivers and what we can control. So phosphorus is identified as the limiting nutrient in freshwater systems. What is a limiting nutrient? So a limiting nutrient is a nutrient in the lowest quantity relative to an organism's need for growth. And it is, again, known to be the limiting nutrient. Phosphorus is known to be the limiting nutrient for algal production in freshwater systems. So to give you a sense of what that means, we all need to consume nutrients as well as organisms. And we could have an ample amount of a certain nutrient and be lacking in another and still suffer. And so it's important to acknowledge that phosphorus in freshwater is the limiting nutrient. Okay, so looking at these two graphs, you'll see this is again Halfman et al. From his 2021 report. Total phosphate annual average concentration on the left over the period of 2006 to 2021. On the right, total phosphate average annual flux. And these flux essentially is another word for loading. So that is the flow times the concentration of phosphate entering the lake at Dutch Hollow and Moravia over those years. You'll notice the last bar there, 2021, you had an increase in phosphate annual average concentration for Dutch Hollow and the inlet in Moravia. And bear in mind, last year was also a wet year. So there are a number of different influencing factors when it comes to nutrient and any pollutant discharge to a water body. But of course, during wet years in a large watershed relative to the size of the lake, like Owasco's watershed, there is the propensity for more runoff. Okay, so bottom line, daily nutrient and sediment loads measured near the terminus of Dutch Hollow Brook revealed that over 90% of the loads are delivered during precipitation and runoff events, typically in the spring season, and these were more spread out last year. Let's talk some about the 9 key element watershed plan. This is a watershed plan that Cayuga County has spearheaded for us recently. This is a plan that's acknowledged by the New York State as a method towards preparing for and expanding capacity for protecting watersheds within the state. So as part of this process, the sub-watersheds were identified, and these HUC-12, these are USGS watershed boundary data sets, of sub-watersheds are indicated on this diagram, this map on the left. Within the 9E plan's soil and water assessment tool, okay, so this is the model that's used for the plan. The acronym there is SWOT. These 5 sub-watersheds were evaluated for their particular lake impacts and recommendations, and also prioritized for work. So I want to just kind of go over some of the bottom line findings from the model, and then the indications from those findings in terms of what our next steps would be, what our action items would be towards watershed protection and management. So I think we're all well aware, perhaps not, that agricultural land is the primary land use within the watershed. And you can see some of those statistics for ag and forest and developed lands that are indicated in this particular table for those HUC-12 subsheds. Let me just hold on. Let me just move this aside here so I can see. And the model identified that agricultural land contributes proportionally more nutrients and suspended solids per acre than any other land use in the watershed, and that for cultivated crops, about 53% of the phosphorus load was sourced from those crops. About 36% observed in the model from pasture and hay fields, 6% from forested lands, and 5% from developed lands. And so thus, approximately 90% of the phosphorus loads indicated from the model originate from the ag sector. Okay, so how did this drive towards recommendations for this plan? We understand that the SWOT model showed significant phosphorus loading reductions would result from 3 remediation practices: restriction of manure and fertilizer application to the land, adoption of strict nutrient management planning for all farms, and the use of winter cover crops. And the good story here is that these 3 action items are underway. There's been a great deal of progress, and a great deal of recognition needs to be made towards that progress, towards the progression really of these particular practices. I just wanted to briefly go over the way the council is funded. Just for some background organizational information, we are entirely grant funded, and fortunately primarily government grant funded. So our 2 primary funders are the water purveyors, of course, most interested in protecting water quality for water consumers, those that consume the water as a source of drinking water. And then we have a variety of commitments, annual commitments from other municipalities that are on our board. And so the council, of course, as I mentioned, will continue to request others contribute, but we also prepare grant proposals for specific projects. And I want to go over some of those proposals and funds awarded and the projects as well. Some of the more recent awards, we did receive an award from Hobart Williams Smith PRISM for an aquatic invasive species portaboard. And so management of aquatic invasive species is important, although we have the condition of the dreissendid mussels within the lake, that now they are present, they're very difficult to handle and to remove at this point. We understand the dangers of invasive species, both aquatic and terrestrial invasive species, and really the extent to which they can damage ecosystems and lead to water quality impairment over the long term. And so this, some of you may have observed, is positioned at the Emerson Park boat launch, and it acts as sort of a companion for the stewardship program that PRISM provides there. Of course, this is portable, and this year we do plan on organizing and coordinating to have this billboard moved to the South Shore Marina boat launch. Also, this last year, we were awarded funding to purchase a new vehicle for the inspection division. The inspection division has grown. We have 2 staff members now, and the second vehicle will allow us to essentially to navigate a broader footprint within the watershed. So thanks to some of the local foundations for those awards. And then very recently, $10,000 from the Great Lakes Commission towards agricultural conservation implementation. I think this was a really neat project. It's sort of a pilot project for the Great Lakes Commission. It was a 50-50 buy-in. They provided the $10,000. But what's really interesting for this particular project, and I won't go into all the details here in terms of how it operated, but this was an example of where the city of Auburn budgeted to commit dollars to this particular program to plan and install what's called a WASCOB on a watershed farm. And WASCOB is a water and sediment control basin. That's one of the measures, one of the practices installed by our conservation districts for controlling, settling sediments that would otherwise run off and perhaps discharge into the lake. This is a picture of Allie Berry. Alexandra Berry is our lead watershed inspector, and myself in front of the 2 inspection division vehicles. And the new vehicle on the left that was procured this year is a hybrid electric all-wheel drive Escape. And you'll notice that we had the vehicles wrapped. And you may also observe the design of that wrap is similar to that of the Auburn Police Department. And so the inspection division of the council considers its work very important. and they have a high level of responsibility in their role. And I think that it's important for the division to have a high level of visibility among the public. Okay, good. And then, so this is just a small Emerson Foundation award for this project several years ago. This was for a physical watershed model. This is an educational tool often used for youth and young adults to educate them on watershed science. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, believe it or not, several of the active Aula volunteers that we've been working with have borrowed the council's model and have used it to educate youth at schools and within other forums. So here's perhaps our biggest reach thus far. We have a grant proposal currently in the ether through the National Resources Conservation Services Regional Conservation Partnership Program. That's the RCPP. This is a federal level grant proposal through NRCS, and it's a commitment, and the proposal was designed as a commitment between the council, the district, and Aula had involvement as well in this particular project. What was proposed really meets the needs, the upcoming needs, according to both the recommendations that come out within the 9-element plan, still a draft, but soon to be approved and finalized, as well as the provisions within the updated watershed rules and regulations concerning credentialed nutrient management planning. So we're looking to get funding so that we can support producers within the watershed to meet the needs that are upcoming, both within the regulatory framework, but also that are part of the recommendations of the 9-element watershed plan. Okay, and so this just shows that this is the from the USDA. This is the NRCS priority source water protection area within which the Owasco Lake watershed resides. Wanted to review some of the work of the Owasco Lake Watershed Inspection and Protection Division. So in my mind, the council serves really two broad roles. One is a central hub for coordinating projects among a wide variety of partners, and really an administrative body for the inspection division that is charged with implementing watershed rules and regulations. What's the division's mission? So they make thorough inspections of the lake, watercourses, and watershed to identify compliance with rules and regs set forth for the watershed, and to provide educational outreach within the watershed community that supports environmental awareness and stewardship. These are our current watershed inspectors. Again, a picture of Alexandra Berry on the left, our lead inspector, and Jillian Eloisio has been with us for about a year. And they're holding up the 2021 annual report. We are responsible for preparing a summary document on an annual basis that summarizes all of the various inspections, outcomes of inspections, and details watershed conditions. And these reports have to go to both watershed or both water purveyors, to the city of Owasco, but they're also distributed to the various municipalities for essentially public circulation. Right, the inspection division meets with the Watershed Inspection Committee on a monthly basis. And this committee has members that represent the interests of water purveyors and therefore water consumers. And then those members are all listed. They include representatives from the city of Auburn, from the town of Owasco and Cayuga County. But there also exists as part of that monthly group in that forum are technical advisors, and they include the leadership from soil and water conservation districts, departments of health, and as well as local farmers. Okay, so I don't want to go into too many details here for the sake of time. You know, we'll go over a summary here, the 2021 inspection summary report. And really the division was not interrupted by COVID-19, the nature of their work. They're out there making observations and detailing those observations to be discussed at those watershed inspection committee meetings. And also, that they continue to meet that objective, implementation of rules and regulations, looking to ensure that protective measures are utilized to minimize stormwater runoff. And their primary activities for last year included inspecting stream bank erosion, roadside ditches, steep slope disturbances, construction sites, septic systems, and agricultural operations. And really broadly, the division responded to water quality threats and participated in a variety of community engagement programs and documented the occurrence of HABs. Okay, so over the course, the bottom line statistics, the course of 2021, the division inspected 109 sites and there were 8 violations. Okay, so the violations essentially are instances where corrective measures are not met upon request, letters are delivered, and then there's a certain amount of time that allows for corrective actions after those letters are delivered. And then essentially if the corrective actions are not then made and they don't take place, there then will be hearings at the Department of Health with jurisdiction. Those are the county Department of Health. So I hope that gives you some background of the process. Okay, and inspection highlights, identifying turbidity, a picture on the left, responding to severe erosion, pictured in the middle there, and on the right, the monitoring installation of erosion control products and addressing failures. So that's a silt fence, and that is a product that is typically used for construction activities to reduce the migration of soils off of those construction sites. Okay, so infrastructure and severe erosion, we have 15 occurrences, 13 that were shoreline stabilization and multiple culvert repairs. There were 18 total sites inspected for infrastructure and severe erosion. Agriculture, total of 8 sites. And I'm gonna keep on rolling through here. Stormwater construction activities, total sites inspected were 49, site violations were 3. Miscellaneous inspections, and there are a variety. We've had calls for beaver activity, wetland concerns, household refuse, you name it. And so with 54 miscellaneous and 2 site violations. Okay, so this is just an example of an infrastructure project that was observed and that the division worked closely with both Cave County Soil and Water and Aula to implement, as well as the town of Scipio Highway Department. This is essentially a concrete sediment trap that's installed along a ditch. This is a practice that's used in certain instances by our soil and water conservation districts, really with the function to reduce stormwater runoff and velocity in ditches, in particular instances where hydroseeding alone and the installation of grass is not effective, especially for steep slopes. And the sign that you see there, positioned next to the ditch, was a project that was led by the late Rick Nelson. That Rick and I and some other partners got together and said, okay, well, let's make this a recognition opportunity, an educational opportunity. It will provide for a sign so that when residents, when community members drive by, they have a sense of what they're looking at. Okay, and so community awareness and recognition is really important. In fact, recognition is a scientifically proven tool for driving behavioral change. So we talk about different strategies here, right? So we're balancing regulatory controls, regulatory measures with our interest in voluntary adoption, okay? And voluntary adoption comes about when you recognize all of the good work that's being done. So many of you may have observed, if you read the Citizen newspaper or the online Auburn Pub, that we publish semi-monthly recognition articles celebrating those watershed residents making positive strides to protect water quality. And so again, a great deal of work is being done. Let's celebrate that work that's being done and continue to motivate people to work in that direction. This is just an example of educating with the watershed model at the Y camp. Other special projects. We've worked closely with AULA over the last several years for AULA's monitoring program. That involves assistance with sample collection, measuring stream flow, utilizing a flow meter, and we're working towards some cross-sectional analyses that will help us utilize new technologies to get at estimating flow. And that's important for calibrating the model for the 9-element plan as we move forward. Okay, and then on the right, we've been involved in the Asian clam survey. This is another invasive species issue. We conduct the survey on an annual basis, and the 2022 survey will take place early next week. This has been an exciting project for us, these hi-fi watercourse level sensors. There are a variety of technologies out there that can help to measure stream elevation. And these particular sensors can be used for flood monitoring, and there's value there for asset management, of course, and for recreators on the lake. But what we would like to drive towards is using this spatially robust technology. We have 15 of these throughout the watershed now, in conjunction with cross-sectional information of the streams, the stream bed, to estimate flow, and then with concurrent concentration information for sediments and for nutrients, we can estimate loads to the lake. That information is very important for us as we work towards calibrating that SWAT model that helps inform our decision-making moving forward. These data are available on the council's website. You can find them readily via one of the tabs. And so the inspection division staff installed and replaced multiple of these sensors throughout the course of this last year. Again, 15 of them are positioned within the watershed. This was a Great Lakes Protection Fund project. We're really trying to strive towards a data-driven approach to reducing nutrient loading. I think there's value here. And I think there's also a value towards advancing flood warning and asset management. So I'd like to keep this going. Funding is always an issue. We had the pilot project grant period will be up later this summer. So considering whether we will fund this moving forward, how we will fund this moving forward is an important consideration. Okay. Yep. These are, you can see the flags there for the various locations within the watershed where they're positioned. This is just another project. So this came about, this was not led by the council specifically, but by one of our leading partners, of course, the Cayuga County Planning Department, that really garners our local FLOPA funding. That's the Finger Lakes Lake Ontario Watershed Protection Alliance funding that is really sort of partitioned for various stewards across the region. This is a new boat wash station that's positioned at Emerson Park, and we encourage folks to clean, drain, and dry their watercraft so we can limit the new spread of invasive species. Let's dive in a little bit on lake-friendly living. Again, working towards common, consistent messaging, really trying to drive towards practice adoption. Lake-friendly living comes out of a coalition group across the Finger Lakes. This figure shows the various groups that are involved. We recently had Canisius and Canadice Lakes have had their steward organizations. Many of these are lake associations come on board with the Lake Friendly Living Coalition. And the coalition's committed to protecting the health of the lakes. And we work together to educate watershed residents in homes and businesses to engage in lake-friendly living practices. Some of you may have seen the various signs that are installed throughout the watershed. The signs were purchased as part of a cost share agreement between the Owasco Watershed Management Council as well as AULA. So we thank AULA for their commitment to this particular project. This is really based out of Lake Friendly Living is based out of a pledge program. So you can access the pledge through the council's website and commit to addressing to taking on recommended conservation and best management practices. And we were able to get pledges directly from municipalities. And for some of those municipalities, they have adorned some of their entering municipality signage with these lake-friendly living signs. The left is a figure that shows what a lawn sign that is really provided for those interested in having one, that is provided to those who take the pledge, so that they can sort of show off their commitment and of course help attract new interest in the program. And we conduct on an annual basis a May educational series. So this year's May series was our second annual. It focused on watershed resiliency. We had a total of 10 webinars and 7 live events that accommodated 371 participants. And then on the right there, for some of the verbiage here, some of the highlights included 462 shrub willow canes that were planted. That was an Owasco watershed project. 5 spotted lanternfly monitoring stations established, 17 rain barrels produced, 28 bird species identified and cataloged, and 50 red oaks and 50 American sweet gum trees distributed to landowners. And again, these are projects that came out of the variety of Finger Lakes stewardship organizations that are members of the coalition. Our schedule for the month of May this year. So for the Owasco specific programming that came out this year, there was a presentation offered by some of the local leaders in the Climate Smart Communities program that I mentioned earlier. Amanda Mazzoni is the principal planner for the Central New York Regional Planning Development Board that she helps municipalities get up and running with this particular program. And Ed Wagner's supervisor for the town of Owasco. The town of Owasco has made great strides in this particular program. You know, they have installed LED lights for all of their street lights. They now have an electric charging station at their municipal office, and really they've made great strides in checking all the boxes towards really manifesting some change to help us address the issues with climate change. Okay, another program that came out from the Owasco contingent was an explanation of Aula's development of a community rain garden project. This rain garden was installed last fall and was really spearheaded by Kim Mills of Aula, and he also presented on this particular project among those who attended the webinar. Just a poster trying to solicit interest from the community to join for that particular rain garden planting last October. Allie and I picked up the plants. Group involved there in preparing to install and plant those plants at Emerson Park. Ended up being a very wet day. We had some challenges that we overcame that day. Finished product, I understand that there are plans to extend that garden, and so we look forward to assisting with that project if possible. And this was the other Owasco project that came out of Lake Friendly Living, and it was this was a live event where we had volunteers assist with the planting of shrub willows. These were provided by SUNY ESF. And planted by both volunteers and staff at the town of Owasco Nursery. And these particular willows will be used for the installation of riparian buffers within the Owasco Lake watershed. This is an example project really spearheaded by Aula in 2021. This was a demonstration of farmer collaboration and riparian buffer willow planting along Van Ness Brook in Fleming. Many of the volunteers, you'll recognize some of our friendly faces from Aula and some leaders, professor from Tim Volk from ESF who provided the willow for that project and installing those willow canes along Van Ness Brook. One of the features that came out of Lake Friendly Awareness in 2021 was a commemorative resolution for lake-friendly awareness in the Finger Lakes that was passed among the New York State Assembly. And in 2022, the Watershed Management Council for Owasco coordinated with champions in both houses to pose a resolution to commemorate lake-friendly living awareness. So this was a combined legislative resolution. Another project here, promoting safer lake-friendly technology. So some of you may be aware of the Ring of Fire events that typically are held around the 4th of July, sometimes on the 4th, around the circumference of the Finger Lakes, primarily the western Finger Lakes, that act as the Ring of Fire events sort of act as a celebration. Something that hasn't been really common for Owasco Lake, but this was an opportunity for us to get on board with this sponsorship of the program via Wegmans, and really a sort of not a cost share program, but essentially a revenue share program on the sale of these LED flares as an alternative to conventional incendiary flares, which are quite frankly unsafe, and also provide for toxic chemicals that will leach off and have the potential to discharge to the lakes. Well, this year, and it's a good thing we were in a position for the newer technology, an Owasco Facebook group decided that they wanted to spearhead their own Ring of Fire event. I think they called it Light Up Owasco. And you see all the flags here for all of the folks around Owasco. And this was on July 4th, as I understand it, that purchased and lit up LED flares around the lake to celebrate. And now this is sort of what it looked like, a photo that was captured of that event. And all of the flares for this program sold out at Wegmans this year. So that program ended up being a success just based on the interest of the community to celebrate that particular event. And this is the last one I'll go over. This highlight is frankly very exciting to me in particular. This is a project that really highlights the council's advancement in holding lands for the protection of what are called ecosystem services. And we work very closely with the Nature Conservancy as a primary partner. And they have, over the course of many years, obtained grant funding to support their role in land acquisition. And so this parcel that you're looking at is a 170-acre parcel in Sempronius that it will be gifted by the Nature Conservancy to the council for the council to steward the parcel. And this particular parcel ranked very highly within their prioritization model. So they model those lands they want to target based on the provision of ecosystem services that protect water quality. Dense forests, wetlands, those sorts of features are important. And this was acquired through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Water Quality Improvement Project funding program. And we're almost there. We're getting close to closing on this. We have the required insurance in place for liability to hold the land. And the official approval from the board came through a couple of months ago, and as part of this, the Nature Conservancy will provide a $15,000 stewardship grant to the council to help provide some of the funding needs to get us going. That'll include covering some of those liability insurance costs. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. I realize it was a long presentation. There's a lot to cover. There are a lot of balls in the air. I provided my contact information as well as the contact information of our inspection division inspectors. We're always happy to engage and answer any questions we can and help in any way that we can. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam. It's very informative. Our next section here is really a Q&A, opening this up. If there are any questions for any of our participants here today, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions there of Adam. It'll be interesting, the dialogue that we have.
You can also use the chat box if you're more comfortable doing that.
Thank you, Dave. All right, Dana, I see your hand up. Would you like to go first?
Well, let me lead off. Thank you. Adam, from my perspective, recently a new program called the Drinking Water Source Protection Program has come on the scene, and you've been part of developing the associated plan. I wonder what the relationship is of that plan. What will it do to help our watershed that other existing plans or almost done plans like the 9E are not able to do? Could you speak to the Drinking Water Source Protection Program, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. That's a great question there, Dana. So the DWSP2 Drinking Water Source Protection Plan or program, this is a New York State funded program that is a program eligible to the water purveyors within the state, those that apply and receive funding. And the way that that program operates and the way that it has operated thus far for the city of Auburn is the funding is provided via the consulting time and work of the consultants that have been involved with that process. So for the difference really between the DWSP2 and the 9-element plan, generally speaking, is that the DWSP2 is, in this case, the city of Auburn's plan specifically. And the DWSP2 can be used by them to their own end without a need for approval by the state. So the 9-element plan is a state approval process. They need to be on board with the finished product. The DWSP2 is an independent plan that is, in this case, the cities, although of course the town of Owasco as a water purveyor could indeed apply and work through the same process. So what are the differences, you ask? So essentially, the DWSP2 includes recommendations, some of which, or I should say many of which, that were outlined within the 9-element plan. And in my mind, the DWSP2 process is an opportunity to reinforce what's being done through the 9-element plan planning process, and also included recommendations for a regulatory update via watershed rules and regulations. And that's important because the city had the opportunity to dictate where that plan went without any influence on the state's behalf. And that's something that they wanted to be highlighted in bold as part of their plan, was the regulatory update, and then references to the recommendations that would come out of the 9-element plan. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I think it does, Adam, or largely does. So since the city of Auburn looks to the entire Owasco Lake as its, I'll say, drinking water reservoir, so its plan, those regulations apply throughout the lake, and they must apply to the watershed, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. So if those regulations, I shouldn't say if, I should say when they are approved. So as part of that process, as we moved on from the community consensus level, which was attained, to the state consensus level, which is now underway. Before we got to the state consensus level, my mind was that this particular process, this update to our regulations, was either going to fall flat, or there would be continued consensus and essentially compromises to some end that would be an approval, right? And in my mind, clearly we're going that way. There will be an approval, and that's a win. That's a win. So yes, and the regulations, yes, they will apply to the entire watershed.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Carol, I see your hand up. What is your question?
Yeah, I think I'm going to ask the same question. I'm not sure, but for the Auburn plan, drinking water plan, how does it get implemented if they're recommendations the implementation of those recommendations still has to be a part of the 9-element plan or the rules and regulations, or are there any teeth to the Auburn recommendations on its own?
Yep, that's a great question too. So I wouldn't say that there are teeth in that there's no requirement based on the completion of that process for any action to take place. This was a program provided via consulting services to identify critical sources and then provide recommendations to protect the lake from sources of pollution. So it's up to the city in terms of how they want to use that plan. We do understand that, like the 9-element plan, the DWSP2, a completed DWSP2 that does not need to be approved by the state, but completed by a water purveyor like the city, will also act as a pathway to funding when it comes to writing grant proposals. Essentially, it's an opportunity to check the box that, hey, we have this plan and we're proposing measures that are recommendations as a fallout of this particular planning process. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
You're welcome. And just in the meantime here, I'd like to respond to Keith Batman from the Ledge, the county Ledge. He did write a little note here in the chat box. When you're able, you may wish to update the WIC. Aileen is no longer a chair of the county legislature. And what I do need to do, Keith, is update the slide in the presentation. So she still acts as the representative on that committee on behalf of Cayuga County. But indeed, of course, you were correct. She's no longer the chair, and I believe that was an old slide. So my mistake, my apologies.
Tarky Heath, I see your hand up. What do you have to ask?
Hi, well, first of all, thank you for this presentation and for the opportunity to join in. It's really well appreciated. So Adam, I know you're focusing, it seems, on recognition, awareness, outreach, education, which are all great and necessary and wonderful. But you did start off, with the enforcement piece, which is, the reason for the cars and so forth to go around. And you mentioned that there were 8 violations and there were corrective actions to be taken. And if not done, I think you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, that these would go to Department of Health hearings, depending on the county that was involved. Did I get that correct?
Yes, you did. You did indeed. Okay. And I'm glad that was conveyed correctly. It is a bit of a complicated process, but yes, you are correct.
So the second part of that, or the third, or however long I need to make this, and I apologize for the length. How does that enforcement piece work? So, for example, what if the violation occurs and it isn't corrected and it goes to some enforcement? What does that look like?
Yeah, so whoever would be the sort of you could say perpetrator, violator, I should say, would be the better term, violator of whatever that regulatory provision is, they would be summoned to a hearing. And like any hearing, they would have an opportunity to make their case, but there would be fines leveraged if it was clear to those involved, and I suppose the jury, or I don't exactly know. I haven't been to a hearing like that myself, and fortunately, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Our bottom line here is our interest is gaining compliance, right? And I think that that's clearly true of any, regulations, certainly environmental regulations, is, we're proud to say that over the last couple of years, we've gained 100% compliance, right? When those letters start to flow, first it's a request, recommendation, and then it's when there's no action taken, it's a violation. And we've gone, as you've seen, as I've indicated via the stats for the various categories that were observed via surveillance of the watershed. Once those violations go out, corrective actions have, in my experience, always taken place. So we're fortunate to have not had to have gotten to that point of actual enforcement by the Department of Health with jurisdiction. But as I understand it, if the corrective action doesn't take place, those hearings, a result of those hearings that were, was a result, I suppose, not in favor of the violator would be in the form of a fine.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure how that would kind of play out. So thanks for clarifying it.
You're welcome.
I have a hand raised here, Adam. I had a quick question. You were talking about advocacy and proactive measures, talking about your land acquisitions, looking more at the climate smart communities. And the third piece was zoning and codes within the townships that make up the watershed. And if you could just build a little on that. Are you visiting planning boards? Are you helping with trainings? I have a personal interest there with zoning and comp plans and such. And just wondering, overall, how do you rate the zoning within the watershed? Is this going to be a big piece in the future for you in looking at a more proactive advocacy role in how land uses are permitted within the watershed?
It's a great question, Anne. Yeah, so of course, being that the nature of the watershed management councils that we're intermunicipal, we have this opportunity to leverage our boards and the representatives that represent, directorship on our board, to both bring opportunities to the municipalities and to learn about their concerns and help them with their particular concerns. So my strength is my resourcefulness. And so I came to understand early on, when it came to erosion and sediment control codes at the municipal level, that the only municipality that has codes in place to address new construction activities to reduce erosion and sediment migration is the town of Owasco. So I had this idea. I was like, okay, this is great. I'm going to, with the permission of town of Owasco, I'm going to essentially duplicate those codes, those documents, and draw in essentially the municipality names for the remaining municipalities, call each and every municipality, and set up a planning board meeting to discuss the merits of adopting these new measures. And it's something that I learned very quickly was going to be a more difficult task than I had thought. And so it's something that is I won't let go of, because there's a lot that can be done there. And still, in my mind, without having to entirely reinvent the wheel, and by utilizing what's been created for the town of Owasco. But it's sometimes when you have Aula's board, right, you have very motivated individuals that are geared specifically towards your interest in protecting the lake. And clearly that's a feature that makes Aula such a wonderful partner for me in my work. And we have municipal representatives on our board that that are making time to volunteer to come to our meetings, to learn, to bring information back to their municipalities, to convey their challenges so we can help. Sometimes, though, to take that work the next step, right, to take that work to a place where we'll actually schedule that board meeting and have folks on board to listen. It takes a little extra nudge. So again, I don't plan to give up there, but I do think that the organizational structure of the management council is really ideal for leveraging the advancement of new codes related to protecting the watershed.
By chance, would a role for the management council be, let's say there's a town or a municipality that's having a public hearing, let's say on a particular concern within a water conservation overlay district, would it be the role of the management council to come and speak at a public hearing on such a topic? You know, is it something that, you know, municipalities can call on you for your input, or is it premature? Is it not the approach you want to take?
I think it's a great approach, you know, I mean, because all of this, you know, we're only as strong as our partnerships are strong. I mean, I firmly believe that, and I've witnessed that as long as I've been in my role here directing the management council. And you know, it bettering our relationships, improving our relationships, specifically with the municipalities, to give them the tools that they need to make these sorts of changes is really critical in my mind. You know, to be completely, you know, transparent and frank here among this group, as I like to be, you know, we have our own capacity constraints, as any organization does. We have 3 staff members. You know, as much as I think I've demonstrated in this presentation, my role as a coordinator for programming and projects among partners, and you know, providing for this platform as a central hub for coordination. I'm also primarily an administrator. So, I mean, we have an organization that has operational needs like any organization, and 2 other staff members that are dedicated to their work in the field for implementing rules and regulations. And so we have our own capacity constraints. If we had, you know, at scale, you know, additional staff or more staff time that we could dedicate to, you know, attending all of the board meetings that were relevant, I would be thrilled. You know, but I have to be choosy because usually I'm the one that will attend those meetings, and of course they are evening meetings after a full day of work. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
Thank you.
You're
Are there,
welcome.
were there any comments in the chat box, Dave?
I'm not seeing any. Adam, I don't know if you've seen any checkbox questions.
Let me just check here to be sure. No, I don't see any additional questions there, Dave.
All right. Are there any other questions for those that are here and attending this evening? See, you're so thorough, Adam. You answered all. Oh, I see Carol's hand. Carol, go ahead.
Okay,
Carol.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
Waiting to see if anybody else had questions. When you mentioned that there was that land donated to the management council, is it your goal that there'll be more and more of that?
So
that you
yes,
be able to oversee?
and I can tell you why. Again, quite frankly, it's owning land strengthens our position, and meaning that the primary directorship for the Watershed Management Council is led by the members group, and the members group is includes membership from the town of Owasco, city of Auburn, Cayuga County, all 3 of which at some level represent the water. They're the water purveyors and represent water consumers. The council was designed that way purposefully, so that the ultimate goal of protecting the watershed for the sake of the lake would be held true. So those people responsible for protecting it would have an additional sort of level of governorship over this particular board. And so in my mind, when it comes to the land acquisition, it's important to remember that at some level, this organization has a political background, right? We work very, very closely with government. And, you know, that of course, you know, bridges our connection very closely with politics, whether we like it or not. But of course, the advantage being that working closely with government is of course this clear opportunity to get work done. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. To get back to your question, why is the land acquisition important? frankly, if there is a change of interest at the government level, in terms of those parties, those representatives that are on our board, and they have less interest in supporting our work in watershed protection, in my mind, if we own lands and we steward lands within the watershed, it's going to be more difficult to dissolve our organization and our purpose. So that's really in part why I'm taking the organization in that direction.
Interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Anything else that you would like to ask of Adam while we have him tonight?
And not a question, but I just wanted to thank Adam for an outstanding presentation and of course for his time.
Yes,
Oh,
I did on that.
It's my sincere pleasure. It really has been wonderful working with AULA members. As I've said to Dana many times, I never cease to be impressed with the level of work that comes out of AULA, acknowledging that it's voluntary. It's just incredible. I mean, your volunteerism is tremendous, and I thank you.
Well, you make it easy to collaborate with you, Adam, and I know we want to continue our work together, you know, as we go forward. There's so much to do as we look at concerns and needs within the watershed, and as we set our goals and strategic plans and action plans to help address that. So thank you so much. I do appreciate your time this evening. As I say, it was very informative. I'm pleased that so many could take the time and join us tonight. Thank you for being with us. We will have another public forum in October, and that topic will be announced shortly. The board is meeting in 2 weeks to discern that. So we'll have more on our bi-monthly public forum presentation scheduled to share in the future. Just watch for our messaging that we do send out via email. So again, thank you so much. Have a good evening and stay well.
See you very soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.